I returned to my apartment in Seattle close to 10 at night after 14 straight hours glued to my screen, fixing lines of code for the new project. My shirt was wrinkled, my tie hung loose, and I looked like a soldier stumbling home from battle. In my hand was a small box from the bakery on the corner. Inside sat a birthday cake I had bought for myself. Through the clear plastic cover, the tiny candle stuck awkwardly in the middle looked like a lone soldier waiting for orders from a general who had already forgotten him. The moment I stepped in, my phone chimed. Not a greeting, not a surprise call. I opened it and almost laughed. A live stream notification. My entire family, father, mother, aunts, uncles, cousins, were at a fancy restaurant raising their glasses to celebrate Brandon, my brother, for signing a new contract with the Seattle Mariners. They sang, they cheered, they hugged like the world revolved around one man. I zoomed in. My father had his arm around Brandon's shoulder. My mother glowed as if she had just won an Oscar, and the relatives jostled to fit into the frame. I watched for 10 minutes and never heard a single mention of Ethan, the other son. That very day, by coincidence, happened to be my 29th birthday. I let out a dry laugh, the kind stripped of warmth. It wasn't that they forgot, they chose to forget. That's the difference. One forgets by accident. But they chose to remember Brandon and erase me. In the Cole household, I was nothing more than a shadow, where all the light had to shine on the basketball star. I set the cake box on the table, kicked off my shoes, letting the worn soles stain the floor. I opened my laptop, pretending that more work might erase this day. But reflex dragged me straight to Facebook. Big mistake. The number glared at me. 0 messages, 0 wishes, a slap without a hand. I laughed again, sharper this time. Even a chatbot hadn't managed to say happy birthday. Meanwhile, Brandon's page was exploding. Hundreds of comments, fireworks, gifts, hearts, and praise flooded the screen. Old friends, childhood coaches, everyone rushed in as if he had invented eternal life. Then I saw it. A comment from my father, the pride of the Cole family. A bright future. Those words lit up against my dark screen like a neon billboard in the desert, reminding me I was nothing. I glanced at my small cake. One unlit candle stood alone in the pale frosting. I wondered if I lit it, would anyone blow it out with me? Or would I just watch the flame die down, wax dripping into the cake like tears no one cared to wipe away? A single candle burdened with the bomb of proving I existed on the day I was born. I pulled out a chair, turned on the TV, just for some human sound. From the live stream, a comment rang out. Congratulations, Brandon. Cheers to the golden boy. I whispered, just loud enough for the walls to hear. Happy birthday, Ethan. You're still alive. No frills, no 3-tiered cake, no choir. Just me to myself. Maybe you're sitting there with a cup of tea or whiskey, thinking that at least he had a cake. I'd agree, but trust me, nothing stings more than a small candle reminding you that the very people who should remember chose not to. I leaned back in my chair and laughed one last bitter laugh that night. And what about you? Have you ever had a birthday forgotten? Ever sat in front of a cake with an unlit candle while your family toasted somewhere else for reasons that had nothing to do with you? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Maybe in this wide world, we'll find someone who truly listens. Some say childhood memories are like an old photo album. Open it and you smell mildew, see a few blurry pictures, and too many blank spaces no one bothered to fill. My album had more blanks than photos. I remember my 10th birthday. People say turning 10 is a milestone, the age when a child is no longer little but not yet grown. For me, it was just a cold afternoon in the backyard, a shaky wooden chair, and a cupcake grabbed from the corner store. I sat there poking the frosting with my finger, listening to the shouts from the ball field a few blocks away, where my whole family cheered for Brandon in the youth championship. They said he was the star of the Cole family. We all had to be there to support him. And me. I was supported by a single candle melting into sugary cream. I blew it out, not wishing for greatness, only whispering, may someone remember today. The wind snuffed it out before I could finish. The universe had a darker sense of humor than me. By 17, nothing had changed. On my birthday, my father drove Brandon in his shiny SUV for a tour of Yale. And me, I was dropped off at Grandma's. She was frail, confused, stuck in the 1960s, and didn't even remember it was my birthday. My dinner was her chicken soup from a faded recipe, and I forced a smile so she wouldn't feel bad. Dad promised Ethan this time, we need to focus on Brandon's future. You understand? I did understand. I understood that Brandon's future always outweighed my present. I understood that my seat in this family was just a waiting chair, while the spotlight stayed glued to Brandon. I finished the soup, listened to the pendulum clock ticking, and muttered, "Happy birthday, Ethan. You understand." At 22, the day of my college graduation, I thought things might be different. I graduated summa cum laude, top of my class in computer science. I prepared a speech, imagined my parents' eyes finally on me, and imagined pride. But I didn't anticipate Brandon showing up with Jessica. The moment I walked on stage, diploma in hand, ready to speak, he dropped to one knee in the middle of the auditorium. "Jessica, will you marry me?" The crowd roared, cameras flashed, and thunderous applause drowned everything. I stood frozen, my diploma clutched tight, smiling awkwardly like a waiter caught in the wrong photo. My speech was swallowed, the whole night hijacked into an engagement party. I wanted to shout, I graduated summa cum laude. I was the top student. But who cared when Brandon, the golden prince of basketball, had staged a fairy tale proposal? I became a side character in my own celebration. Later, all I could do was joke bitterly. Truly unforgettable. Probably the first graduation in history ruined by a brother's proposal. The years that followed played out the same script. I finished a major project. Dad said nice, but Brandon scored 30 points last week. I earned recognition at work. Mom replied she was proud, but had I seen the article calling Brandon the future of American sports? Every one of my achievements was reduced, side by side with his, like a crumpled draft compared to a glowing billboard. I never said it out loud, but I started collecting proof of the favoritism. Birthday cards with nothing but scribbled love. Mom and Dad, no personal note. Family dinners where I was seated at the far end by the sink. Photos on the wall where I looked like a stranger accidentally caught in the frame. The older I got, the clearer it became. My role in this family was a bench seat. There if needed, invisible if not. They say time heals. For me, time was an alarm clock that never stopped ringing. Brandon, Brandon, Brandon. I grew used to birthdays no one remembered. I grew used to my candle always being smaller than his fireworks. But getting used to something doesn't mean accepting it forever. Tonight, as I sit with my small cake watching my family toast each other on my phone screen, I realize I've lived my entire life inside a play I never auditioned for. And if you've ever felt forgotten like that, you know the sharpest pain comes not from strangers, but from being invisible to your own blood. I drew in a breath and laughed bitterly. Funny, isn't it? People say family is the safest place, yet for 29 years I've blown out candles in silence, a stranger under my own roof. Some days you think you'll just go home, grab a beer from the fridge and sleep it all away. But that night, instead of beer, I got a number dancing on my laptop screen. $82,000, a bonus for the AI project I had just completed. Enough to trade in a car, buy a house, or at least take a long trip across Europe, unless you belong to the Cole family. The email came from the project director Braun, with a short line. The company recognizes your contribution. No fancy words, no frills. Just solid, unlike the endless praises Brandon received every day from the whole family. I stared at the number, feeling like I had just won the lottery. And you know what lottery winners do? They scream, call friends, and order pizza. Me, I barely had time to smile when my phone buzzed. The Cole family group chat, first message from my father. Ethan should contribute $25,000 to Brandon's wedding. He just got a bonus. Read that again, $25,000. Almost a third of my reward, decided in one sentence. Before I could react, my mother chimed in. That's right, Ethan just got money. Family is about supporting each other. She even misspelled my name. After 29 years, my own mother still couldn't type it right. But she typed family is about supporting each other fast and clearly. I almost laughed until I choked. Supporting each other meant I paid, and they toasted. I set my phone down, staring at the 82,000 in the email and the 25,000 in the chat. A simple equation, bitter as hell. Suddenly, the money didn't look like a prize anymore, but like meat dangling in front of wolves. That's when Marcus, my coworker at the next desk, leaned over. He saw my frown and asked, "What's wrong? Hit the jackpot, but still look like you lost a lawsuit." I handed him the phone. He skimmed the messages, snorted. "This isn't a family. It's Brandon's fan club. They don't need you except for your wallet." I laughed, a mix of sarcasm and release. I was used to bitter words, but hearing them out loud made it real. My family wasn't a home. They were an organization, and I was the nameless sponsor footing the bill. Marcus pressed his hand on my desk and lowered his voice. "You've got 82 grand in your hand. This is your chance. Don't waste it on people who treat you like dirt." His words echoed in my head. I looked back at the number. I had told myself for years that patience would earn me recognition. But the truth was clearer now. They weren't blind. They just kept their eyes shut because it was convenient. I leaned back in my chair and muttered, maybe it's time I stopped being an audience member in the live show called Brandon. Old scenes rushed through my mind. The cupcake at 10, the chicken soup at 17, the summa cum laude diploma drowned under the cheers of a marriage proposal. They all lined up like logic in a clean sequence. This wasn't a handful of accidents. This was a system. And I, the unwilling spectator, had been shoved into the cheap seats with duct tape over my mouth. I picked up my phone, opened the group chat again. The messages kept coming. "Make sure you transfer the money before the end of the month. The family counts on you. It's your responsibility." I typed the word "okay," then deleted it. I didn't reply. Let them think I'd obey like always. But this time was different. A small fire had sparked inside me, one that no lecture about family duty could put out. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, named it Cole Files. Inside, I started dragging in the evidence I'd kept for years. Photos of Brandon's birthdays with towering cakes, a clip of my father declaring Brandon the only pride of the family, receipts for vacations Brandon alone enjoyed, all neatly organized, like a lawyer building a case. The more I dragged, the more I realized. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need noise. I only needed the truth. And truth, when lined up, shouts louder than rage. Marcus watched me work, surprised. "What are you doing?" I smirked. "Not revenge. I just want them to look in the mirror. If they hate what they see, that's not my fault." Marcus burst out laughing, slapped my shoulder. "Ethan, this is the first time I've seen you smile like a real man. You've always looked like a walking computer." I laughed with him, but inside I had already decided. This walking computer was about to run a new equation, one where Brandon no longer wins and Ethan no longer loses. That night, I didn't light any candles on the store-bought cake. Instead, I kept the screen glowing. In that light, I saw a man who no longer belonged on the bench, a man holding data, evidence, and for the first time, control, and I thought to myself, this board is about to flip. Some people keep family photos to remind themselves of love. I kept family photos too, but for a different reason. I collected them as evidence. Yes, it sounded like a crime thriller, except the culprits weren't strangers. They were my own parents. I started with a new folder on my external drive and named it Cole Files. The name itself made me laugh. It looked like an FBI dossier, except inside weren't state secrets, but proof of favoritism. Imagine the CIA opening it, only to find a guy who spent 29 years proving his parents loved his brother more. Who says I'm not patient? First entry, Brandon's birthday photos. I dragged a whole series from my old drive. 3-tier cakes, balloons flooding the room, even a hired band. My parents looked like they were hosting the Oscars for their eldest son. And me, I had exactly one picture, sitting in front of a cupcake, smiling crookedly, with an empty chair behind me. Side by side, you'd think I was some neighbor who wandered in, not their child. Second entry, receipts. I dug through the cardboard box under my bed, where I stuffed everything no one cared to keep. Jackpot. A photocopy of the bill for Brandon's sports card, 18. $32,000. And I had 18. A 6-month bus pass is worth $120. I snapped a picture of the bill and labeled it Exhibit B, car versus bus. I laughed out loud at my own joke. Third entry, emails. Now this was gold. I had an entire thread of my parents writing to friends and relatives. We are proud to share that Brandon made the national team. Brandon just bought a condo downtown, and we are so thrilled. But try finding one line about Ethan. Nothing. Not a single word. I printed a few, highlighted them in yellow. Looking at the stack, I felt like a lawyer prepping for trial. Family court, case title, Ethan v. the Coles. I sat there all evening, the blue screen light making me look like I was preparing a boardroom presentation. But really, I was just arranging shards of memory, each one a tiny blade. Then, out of nowhere, I got a gift from above. One afternoon, my mother tried to message the Cole family core group, but somehow added me to a side chat where I was never meant to be. I opened it, heart pounding like I just hacked a bank account. There they were, my parents and Brandon, plotting. My father wrote, "Ethan needs to contribute more to the family. He owes us, owes." I nearly dropped my phone. What exactly do I owe for being born into this family? If debt works like that, then Brandon owes the world for hogging all the oxygen when he walks into a room. My mother replied, "Exactly. He just got a bonus. 25,000 is nothing. He has to know family comes first." Brandon chimed in, "Right. He doesn't have a family of his own. Extra money should support us." I let out a raspy laugh that turned into tears. In their eyes, I was nothing but a walking ATM. This wasn't a family group chat. It was a bank management meeting with me as the unaware client. I took screenshots and saved them to Cole files, labeled them Exhibit D, the WhatsApp crime syndicate. Sitting there, I didn't feel the usual anger. I felt something colder, almost clinical. The glow of the screen reflected in my eyes like the lamp in an interrogation room. I was no longer the forgotten youngest son. I was the prosecutor, ready to charge those who use the word family as a mask for favoritism. I pictured the day I'd open my laptop in front of them, project each piece of evidence on a big screen. I wouldn't need to yell, cry, or beg. I just let the truth dance by itself. And the truth, trust me, crushes every excuse. That night, I closed the Cole Files folder, pulled out the drive, and locked it in my drawer. I sat still, sipped cold coffee, and smirked. Well played, family. If this is a chess match, you've made your first move. The only problem is, I know how to play too. That night, the restaurant glowed like a Broadway stage, missing only the red velvet curtain. It sat right on the edge of Lake Union, the kind of place people chose for proposals or million-dollar deals. The Cole family chose it for something else, a family tribunal dressed up as dinner. I walked in, shirt pressed, leather briefcase in hand. Inside that briefcase was the Cole files. I knew I was about to play lawyer and defendant in the same performance. They were all seated. My father, in a dark suit, holding a glass of wine like a judge about to pass sentence. My mother adjusted the flowers on the table, smiling thinly, eyes scanning me like a barcode to see if I brought an envelope of cash. Brandon, no surprise, sat in the center, hair slicked, voice booming as he bragged about wedding plans with Jessica. I took my usual seat at the far end of the table, the honorary guest spot that was anything but an honor. After a few appetizers, my father set down his glass with solemn weight. He cleared his throat. "Ethan, you'll cover the $25,000 for Brandon's wedding, won't you?" My mother gave a small nod as if he had just declared a universal truth. Brandon leaned back, arms crossed, waiting for my obedient yes, like a master testing his servant. I stayed still, calmly opened my briefcase, and pulled out my laptop. The click of the hinge carried so clearly that even nearby tables turned their heads. I spun the screen toward the family and tapped a key. First slide, Brandon's 14th birthday. A 3-tier cake, balloons filling the room, gifts piled high. I smiled, voice flat. Exhibit a glorious 14th birthday. Wish I had blown out candles like that. I clicked forward. Ethan's 14th birthday. A tiny cupcake, one crooked candle, me sitting alone in the backyard. I looked at my parents. Oh, right. I was also 14 that year. Fair comparison, don't you think? My father frowned. Ethan, what do you think you're doing? Let's call it a family presentation. PowerPoint edition. I smirked. Next slide. A chart I had built. Left column, Brandon. Right column, Ethan. Total spent on Brandon from his teenage years to now. $240,000. Total spent on Ethan. $6,200. I angled the screen, enunciating every word. See? 240,000 versus 6,200. A simple calculation. Brandon got cars, Yale tuition, and now a wedding. I got bus passes and takeout meals, and the honor of chipping in 25,000 more. Magnificent. My mother gripped her napkin, face pale. Brandon forced a smile. Ethan, you're blowing this out of proportion. Money isn't how you measure love, really. Then why did the family chat say I owed 25,000? Looks like in this house, love does come with a dollar sign. I opened another file. Project a screenshot of their messages. The words lit up on the screen. Ethan owes us. He just got a bonus. 25,000 is nothing. The table froze. My father growled. You have no right to violate the family's privacy like this. Oh, so I'm still family. I thought I was just the sponsor. Silverware clattered. Brandon's face flushed. You don't get it, Ethan. This is responsibility. Family supports each other. I laughed and clapped once, startling nearby diners. Exactly. Support each other. Brandon receives. I pay. Perfect balance. Justice itself, though tipped entirely to one side. My mother whispered, her voice shaking. You're breaking my heart, Ethan. I locked eyes with her, tone sharp as glass. Sorry for breaking your heart. But does heartbreak cover 240,000? Silence fell like a curtain. I stood slowly, closed the laptop, and lifted my briefcase. My voice was calm, low but steady. I'm done with this play. From now on, you can keep worshiping Brandon without me as your backdrop. I pushed back my chair and walked away. Behind me, I heard my mother sob, my father bark, Ethan, come back, and Brandon mutters something about ingratitude. I didn't turn around. I just smiled, a bitter smile sweeter than any wedding cake. Ingrate, maybe, but at least for the first time in my life, I am grateful to myself. Outside on the terrace, the wind off Lake Union bit cold. I drew in a long breath, feeling the weight of 29 years slip from my shoulders, and I knew. From that moment on, I was no longer a side character. They say birthdays are the day others give you gifts. For me, in 29 years, if I had waited for gifts from my family, I would have starved long ago. So this year, I gave myself one big enough to cover every forgotten birthday. An apartment overlooking Elliott Bay in Seattle. On the day I signed the contract, the agent asked if I wanted to invite family to see it before signing. I just smiled. No thanks. If I invite them, I'll end up buying this place for Brandon. She laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. If she had ever met my parents, she would know it wasn't. The apartment sat on the 18th floor, walls of glass opening to deep blue water and white ferries gliding across like whales on schedule. I stood in the empty living room, listening to the echo of my footsteps, and felt something I had never felt in the Cole house. Space that belonged only to me. That first week, I turned it into a real home. White walls filled with the frames I chose. A group photo of my team after closing the AI project. My summa cum laude diploma, finally displayed where it belonged. A scanned copy of my first patent. Even the cover of a tech magazine where my face sat in a tiny corner. The same things my family dismissed as childish, I hung like medals. My desk sat by the window where morning light poured straight onto my laptop, coffee in hand, staring out at Elliott Bay. I thought to myself, this is my stage now. No more sidelines, no more cupcakes in the backyard. I decided to throw myself a late birthday party. Nothing fancy, no fireworks, just a few people who actually saw me. Marcus was the first on the list, the coworker who once called my family the Brandon Fan Club. He deserved the first beer in the new apartment. The second was Mrs. Whitaker, my 82-year-old neighbor from the old building. Petite, bright-eyed, with a rare superpower. She remembered my name, never confused it with Brandon, never misspelled it. She once baked me cookies the day I landed my first job. When I invited her, she smiled. Of course, Ethan. Who turns down a reason to eat cake? The night of the party, the place smelled of fresh pizza and cold beer. Marcus showed up early with a six-pack, grinning. Congratulations, Mr. Million-Dollar Apartment Owner. I adjusted my glasses. Don't say that too loud. If my father hears, he'll make me sign the deed over to Brandon. We both burst out laughing. When Mrs. Whitaker arrived, I opened the door. She wore a thick coat and carried a neatly wrapped blue package. A birthday gift, she said softly, from someone grateful to be invited. Everyone deserves a family who chooses them, Ethan. Inside was a gray wool scarf she had knitted herself. The stitches were loose, a few uneven, but it was warmer than any gift I had ever received. My throat tightened. She had said something simple, but it hit me straight in the heart. A family who chooses you. We gathered around the makeshift dining table in the living room, eating pizza, drinking beer, music humming from a small speaker. No one mentioned Brandon. No one asked about family obligations. We just laughed, swapped stories, and for the first time I was the center without fighting for it. When the small cake came out, Marcus made me light a candle. I watched the flame flicker, then blew it out to a loud happy birthday from exactly two people. Two voices, but strong enough to drown out every cheer I had missed before. After the party, I took a photo. Standing in front of the huge glass window, beer in hand, Seattle's lights and Elliott Bay sparkling behind me. I posted it with the caption, 29th birthday, the board is flipped. My phone buzzed nonstop. Not from family, I had muted them. From colleagues and friends, dozens of messages. Congratulations, Ethan. Well deserved. Amazing. I sat back, reading each one, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel forgotten. Somewhere in my mind, I pictured my father's face when he read that caption. The board is flipped. Maybe he would rage. Maybe my mother would cry. Maybe Brandon would text, "You're petty." I just shrugged, because this time the board wasn't theirs to set. I wrapped Mrs. Whitaker's scarf around my neck and stepped onto the balcony. The wind off the bay was sharp, but the scarf was warm. And I thought, this is the real gift. Not cake, not a party. The gift is the right to choose who gets a seat in your life. A week after my belated birthday party, I thought the storm had passed. Wrong. The Cole family never lets a so-called debtor walk away so easily. Monday morning, I walked into the office ready to brief my team on the latest AI update. The smell of coffee hadn't even settled when chaos broke out at the front desk. A familiar voice cracked like a whip. Family first, work second. I looked up. My father, Richard Cole, towered in the lobby. Dark gray suit, red tie, like he was running for office. The only problem, this wasn't the city hall. This was a private tech company. The receptionist went pale. Employees peeked nervously over cubicles. A normal morning turned into a soap opera. I strode over, hiding my sigh. Dad, this isn't the place for speeches. He swung his gaze on me, eyes blazing. No, the wrong place is where you abandon your family. A few employees bit their lips to stifle laughter. I saw someone sneak their phone up to live stream. Modern tech really was a blessing sometimes. I put a hand lightly on his shoulder and whispered, "Come with me. We'll talk in the conference room." I guided him just politely enough to keep it from looking like a scene. Once the door closed, I set my laptop on the table and faced him squarely for the first time. Real family doesn't calculate like this, I said, my voice flat, cold as the wind off Elliott Bay. He let out a mocking laugh. You dare say that? After all we've done for you, fed you, educated you, paid every penny. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. All you've done, $240,000 for Brandon, $6,200 for me. Want me to print the receipts and wallpaper this room? Don't be insolent, he barked. All you know are numbers. Family isn't an Excel sheet. I smirked. Funny. Then why did you call it a debt when you demanded $25,000 from me? Sounds more like Excel than love. Silence. His jaw clenched, veins rising. I knew I had landed the blow. My phone buzzed. Brandon calling. I hit the speaker. Ethan, his voice boomed like he was courtside. You're ruining the family's reputation. Everyone's talking about it. What's this about the board flipping? You're embarrassing mom and dad. I looked straight at my father, then answered calmly, no, brother, I'm just refocusing the lens. For 29 years, it's been fixed on you. Now I'm pointing it where it belongs. On the other end, Brandon faltered. You're petty. I chuckled. If protecting myself is petty, then maybe the whole world is petty. Except you. My father snatched the phone, growled. Brandon, focus on the wedding. I'll deal with him. He slammed it down and turned back to me. What do you want, Ethan? Money? Recognition? Status? I shrugged. No, I want fairness, but if that's too expensive in this family, I'll create it here. He shot to his feet, fingers stabbing the air at me. You'll regret this. The wedding will happen without you. Everyone will see you for the ungrateful son you are. I packed my laptop calmly, ungrateful to who? To parents who turned me into an 8, to a brother who thinks I'm his personal wallet. Then yes, I'm ungrateful. And for once, I'm glad I am. His hands slammed the table, the sound rattling glasses. Then he stormed out, footsteps pounding like war drums. I sat there for a moment, exhaling. A knock at the door. Marcus peeked in, eyes wide. Should I call security? He looked like he was about to bite someone. I laughed. No need. He only roars inside the family circle. Out here, we've got something he's never known. Transparency. Marcus nodded, handing me a cup of coffee. You know, around here, people respect you for your talent. At home, sorry, it sounds like they only see a walking wallet. I took a sip, nodded, true. But maybe that's a blessing, because this walking wallet just learned how to zip itself shut. That day, I delivered my presentation to the board with steady hands, as if no storm had ripped through the lobby. My data was praised and the CEO clapped my shoulder. You just saved a $3 million deal. Outstanding. Walking out, colleagues shook my hand, eyes filled with respect. I smiled, thinking, here I am valued. At home, I'm a shadow. My phone buzzed again, a message from Brandon. Mom cried all night. You're happy now, I replied. If she cried because of the truth, then I'm not happy. But at least this time she cried for the right reason. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked down the glass corridor with my head high. Outside, Seattle drizzled, city lights shimmering on wet streets. Only one thought burned clear inside me. My family may see me as a wallet on legs, but in the real world, I am myself. And for the first time, that is enough. 1 year passed as fast as a mouse click. I still remember setting my beer down on the balcony table of my new apartment and typing that caption. 29th birthday. The board is flipped. Back then, I had no idea how much the next year would change. The AI product my team and I launched hit the market that spring. In the first quarter alone, revenue jumped more than 40%. The media gave me a nickname that sounded both proud and ridiculous. The invisible engineer turned leader. The company promoted me to engineering lead, which meant I finally had a voice, real authority, and most importantly, respect. The one thing 29 years in the Cole household never gave me. I bought a leather chair for my office and leaned back with a grin. At last, a seat with my name on it. Simple, but to someone raised on the edge of the table, it was the sweetest symbol. Then came my 30th birthday. I wasn't going to let it slip by quietly. The balcony opened to a glowing Seattle skyline, a stage where I was the director. I set the table, hung a few strands of lights, ordered a 3-tier cake, a gift to myself I'd never had in 30 years. Marcus handled the drinks. Mrs. Whitaker brought her secret recipe roast chicken. The guest list was colleagues and a few new friends from tech. None of the Coles. I didn't send an invite, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. It wasn't erasing them from the list. They'd never written me about it to begin with. Music filled the air. Glasses clinked. Seattle's lights reflected in everyone's eyes. I blew out 30 candles to the sound of cheering voices. No lonely cupcake. No empty chair behind me. And then, as every story seems to demand a twist, Brandon showed up. His BMW pulled to the curb, headlights scattering across the water. I shivered, not from fear, but from curiosity. What role would he play in this late-night drama? He stepped onto the balcony, dressed sharp as if he'd walked out of a cologne ad, but his eyes were different. No arrogance, just a hint of unease. In his hand was a large envelope. He held it out. Found this in Dad's storage. Thought you should keep it. I opened it. Inside was an old photograph, edges yellowed. Ethan Cole, 8 years old, sitting on the backyard swing, hair messy in the wind, smiling wide. No Brandon in the frame, no parents at my side, just me, alone but smiling like the whole world was watching. Brandon's voice was rough. You were always there. We just didn't see you. I stayed silent for a while. Strangely, I didn't feel triumph, and I didn't feel ready to forgive. I just felt the plain truth. At last, even Brandon had to admit I existed, but that no longer mattered. I folded the photo, slipped it into my pocket. Thanks. But Brandon, I don't need anyone to prove I exist anymore. I see myself. His head dropped, as if a man used to holding it high had bent for the first time. The party hushed for a moment until Marcus slapped my shoulder and shouted, "All right, party's still on. Who needs another beer?" Laughter returned, warm and bright. Brandon stayed. Not a star, just another guest. He listened to Marcus tell stories, forced a smile when Mrs. Whitaker offered him chicken. And me. I sat in the center chair on my balcony, the city lights stretched out beneath my feet, knowing the truth. Real victory isn't when others recognize you. It's when you recognize yourself. The night ended late. Guests left one by one, leaving echoes of laughter in the apartment. Brandon paused at the door, hesitated. I don't know if things can be fixed, but I want to start. I nodded slightly, then start. Just don't expect me to play my old role. He nodded back and walked away. The door shut, leaving me with the photo in my pocket and Seattle's lights beyond the glass. I poured another glass of wine, sat back on the balcony. 30 years. Finally my turn, and I knew every person watching this story would understand. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't bringing someone down. It's standing tall, lighting yourself up. Late at night, Seattle lit up like a giant circuit board, every lamp a glowing chip against the sky. I sat on the balcony of my apartment, Mrs. Whitaker's knitted scarf around my neck, a glass of red wine in hand. In the wind and the faint horn of a distant ferry, I heard something familiar. Silence, but not the cold silence of forgotten birthdays. This was the silence of control, the silence of someone who finally held the win. I sipped, let the bitter edge spread across my tongue, then said the words it had taken me 30 years to form. Family can forget you, but you are not allowed to forget yourself. It sounded simple, but try living 3 decades as the backup, hearing your parents shout your brother's name while yours got misspelled even in the family chat. Watching someone else blow candles on a 3-tier cake while you stared at a lone candle on a cupcake. It doesn't feel simple. It feels like living in a house your whole life without ever seeing your name on the lease. I know some of you watching this story are nodding, maybe with a bitter smile. That's me. So let me ask plainly, have you ever been overlooked in your own family? Have you ever felt like a shadow there to fill the numbers while the spotlight stayed fixed on someone else? If you have, tell me in the comments. And tell me where you were watching from, New York, California, Texas, or maybe a small town where people remember the local team's score more easily than your birthday. Trust me, typing something like "I'm from Florida and my mom forgot my birthday 3 years straight" will lift more weight off your chest than you expect. I leaned forward, eyes on the glow of the Space Needle. I used to think to be seen, I had to shout louder, chase harder, fight for scraps of light. Turns out the only way to be seen is to buy your own lamp, switch it on, and stand tall. No permission, no invitation. At work, I was praised, promoted, valued for real numbers. At home, I was only asked to transfer funds. That contrast taught me enough. Some families are just fan clubs with 1 star. And if you're not the star they chose, you'd better buy yourself a new ticket. I set my glass down, exhaled, not the heavy sigh of resentment, but the release of freedom. I turned to you, the ones who stayed with me from that 10th birthday cupcake to my 30th birthday feast. And I want to leave you this. If you believe silence and truth are the strongest weapons, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. I promise no one's poisoning the button. Worst case, you'll hear another engineer ramble about birthdays. Best case, you'll hear your own voice echo in this story. My phone lit up with dozens of unread messages from family. I didn't open them. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to. Instead, I laughed, not bitter, but with the edge of someone who had finally learned to play by his own rules. They thought I was just my brother's shadow. But you see it now. The board has flipped. I leaned back in my chair, the city glowing beneath my feet, and raised my glass to myself. After 30 years, I had finally found the real birthday gift, the right to stand tall, face forward, and see myself.